One person is dead following a triple shooting at Queen and Portland. We'll have the latest on this investigation coming up.
Umar Zamir, the man accused of killing a Toronto police officer, continues to testify at his first-degree murder trial.
And former football star and accused double murderer O.J. Simpson has died at 76. We'll take a look at his life and legacy coming up.
Good afternoon and welcome to CP24 Live at Noon. I'm Bakari Savage.
And I'm Lena Lattifat. Thanks so much for joining us. We begin with breaking news. O.J. Simpson, former football star and accused double murderer, has died.
Yeah, CTV's Scott Hurst has this story. Scott, what do we know about his death so far?
Good afternoon, Bakari and Lena. O.J. Simpson dead at the age of 76. That's according to family in a post on social media site X. And more from that post, they say he was surrounded by children and grandchildren and died after a battle with cancer. Of course, the name, Orenthal James Simpson, OJ, or the Juice, a name that means so many different things to so many different people. Divisive, controversial, ultimately a lightning rod. The 1995 acquittal in the murder of former wife Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ron Goldman, making his name infamous. Before that, June 17th, 1994, so many people remember where they were that night. The white Bronco chase, ultimately reality TV before reality TV. And the trial was ultimately the first wall-to-wall trial with TV coverage, beaming the images around the world, making OJ his legal team and some of the images, making them known and seen around the world. When you think about the glove that was part of the evidence and the quotes from that trial, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. That trial also stoking racial tension in America. But long before that, OJ was celebrated as one of the best and most popular athletes of his generation. He parlayed that success into TV and film, living a Hollywood lifestyle. All that changed in the massive fall from grace in the sensational 1995 trial and the murder of his former wife, and was acquitted in that, but ultimately found responsible in her death in a civil lawsuit. Later found guilty in Nevada for armed robbery and kidnapping. That case tied to sports memorabilia, spending several years behind bars. So really a complicated storyline, a controversial storyline, infamous to some, celebrated to others when you talk about his athletic career, his football career. But Bakari and Lena, no doubt about it, one of the biggest names ultimately of the 1990s.
All right, CTV National's Scott Hurst reporting on the controversial legacy of O.J. Simpson. Thanks so much for summing that up for us. So well put, Scott.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Well, an overnight shooting at a busy downtown street has left one person dead. Two more are injured.
CP24's Courtney Heels has the very latest on this investigation from Queen and Portland. Courtney.
Good afternoon, Lena and Bakari. We can tell you in the last few minutes, police have cleared the scene here, but this is still a very active homicide investigation. Police are trying to figure out who was responsible for this triple shooting that left one person dead, another two still in hospital. Now, we arrived here several hours ago, just about 5:30 in the morning. At that time, the whole street was blocked off. Emergency crews were called here just before 3 in the morning, and police say there were several people out on the streets, out on the sidewalk when shots rang out. Again, 3 people shot. One rushed to hospital. That individual who did not survive, a man who was 30 years old, and the other 2 who suffered gunshot wounds, a woman who was 36 and a man who was 33. They are still in hospital recovering. Their injuries considered not life-threatening. Police don't have much of a description for the person or people responsible. Here's the latest from police on what they've been able to piece together so far.
There were a lot of people here in a variety of different establishments. You can see that there's a couple clubs, a restaurant there. People were in and out of all of those establishments. The actual incident occurred on the sidewalk itself, and then as a result, people, fled to different locations, including some of those establishments for safety.
And police were also asked if this was a random shooting or targeted, and they say they just don't know yet because it is very early. They say it looks as though it is targeted, but again, they're still trying to investigate, talking to people who were here. They also say they're going over surveillance video, and they say that businesses in this area are cooperating with them, giving them access to footage to really get a sense of what unfolded here. They say the shooting happened on the sidewalk just outside of some establishments here, but again, not exactly clear on how it unfolded, if there was was some sort of fight or if somebody showed up with a gun. As for the description of the vehicle believed to be involved in this, the getaway car, police say it looks like it's a two-door, dark-colored sedan. We expect to get more information on a suspect description later on today, guys. Over to you.
All right, Courtney Heels working on this case. Thanks so much for this, Courtney. Well, emotional testimony this morning from Umar Zamir, who is accused of killing Toronto Police Constable Jeffrey Northrup. Zamir took the stand for a second day, recounting the events that led to Northrup's death. He testified that he didn't know Northrup and his partner, who were dressed in plain clothes, were police officers, and that he was scared and tried to leave the underground parking garage in his vehicle. Prosecutors allege Zamir made a series of maneuvers that caused Northrup's death. Zamir has pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder. And for a closer look at this trial and Umar Zamir's testimony, we're joined live in studio this afternoon by Trevin David, criminal lawyer and partner at Daniel Brown Law. Trevin, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
I know you've been following the testimony very closely. What do you make of Umar Zamir's testimony so far?
So I think the first thing I'd say is that it's a sort of a very emotional and powerful statement. The first thing I'd say is a person, any defendant, doesn't have to testify. They don't have to take the stand in their defense. We also know that his wife has already testified already, or has already laid the scene and told us an emotional testimony about what was going on that night and the emotions in the car and that they didn't know they were police officers. So he's taking a big risk by coming forward. But I think what he's doing, so he's telling the jury, I understand I don't have to. I know it's a risk, but it's very important for me to let you know what was going through my mind at that time, from my perspective.
I want to talk about that risk because with this comes the potential of cross-questioning, of course. How do you think, you're a criminal defense lawyer, how do you think Umar Zamir's team weighed this possibility, this decision?
I think it's the sort of decision that keeps any criminal defense lawyer up several nights at least, whether you call your client or whether your client should testify, should they not testify. When he testifies, now he's given his evidence, he's going to be cross-examined by very experienced Crown attorneys. So there's a huge risk there, but I think sometimes they weigh it against the balance of hearing someone, you know, a jury wants to hear someone come forward. Everybody else has testified, been cross-examined. You get to do that yourself. It's only fair sometimes. Yeah, and of course, the Crown will try to poke holes in his version of what happened, and that's the risk you take when you decide to do something like this. Of course.
You know, when we've been listening to what's happened in court, we've noticed there's so many contradictions, so many conflicting testimonies. How difficult does that make it for the jury here? It's incredibly difficult, and I think you even saw in Zamir's lawyer when he gave his opening statement to the jury, he said, I expect you're going to hear different evidence, different narratives. The police are going to say one thing, Zamir and his wife are going to say another, and some independent witnesses are going to say something else. It's very difficult. And ultimately, at the end of the day, when you decide whether someone is guilty or not, you have to decide, am I sure something happened? And when sometimes you can't choose between who you believe or who not to believe, at the end of the day, there's a reasonable doubt. Yeah. So if you are accused of killing a police officer, you are automatically charged with first-degree murder. It is my understanding that Umar Zamir may be found guilty of a lesser charge if he isn't found guilty of first-degree murder. Is that your expectation? Where do you see this going? That's correct. Right now, obviously, the Crown Attorney has said our position is he knew they were police officers. He made these series of maneuvers. The defense has said it's a tragic accident. What may be possible is that the judge may say, if the jury is not sure whether he thought he was a police officer, but maybe still did something unlawful. The way that he chose to leave was intentional. There could be a chance of a second-degree murder charge being left with the jury to consider, or a manslaughter charge. Whether they do or not is really, that's something for the judge to decide. I want to talk about the Crown now and the difficult position they find themselves in. How do they prove that this was intentional? What do you make of that based on the evidence we've heard thus far? I think it's going to be very challenging. Obviously, you have the evidence of the police officers who say, we clearly heard Mr. Northrup. We said that we were police officers. And if you have to square that with some of not only Mr. Zamir and his wife's evidence, but also independent witnesses who were in that same garage that said, we had no idea that these were police officers. We were just trying to get away. We thought it was something like a robbery or something else. So I think that that's going to be a very difficult thing. So really what the Crown Attorney is going to have to say is trust these police officers and disbelieve everybody else. Either they're lying or maybe they're unreliable. Right. Okay, so this is day 2 of Mr. Zamir's testimony. Can you talk about what happens next and what the next steps look like?
So, from what I understand, Mrs. Zamir has he started cross-examination. So the Crown Attorney is already asking him questions. I do not know how long that will take. And then after his evidence is finished, the defense may choose to call other witnesses, or they may say, we have called all the evidence that we need. At that point, then, they will both give their closing addresses to the jury, which will probably happen likely on Monday. A judge will tell them the law, and then the jury will then decide. So I expect we're in the home stretch. We're going to have an answer probably sometime next week.
Okay, Trevin David, criminal lawyer and partner at Daniel Brown Law. It's been good to sit down with you and get your insights on this. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
And with that, Bakari, we'll send it back to you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Lena. And still with the story, CTV's John Woodward has been in the courtroom today listening to Zamir's testimony, and he joins us live from the courthouse. John.
Bakari, today we saw a continuation of Umar Zamir's examination in chief, where his lawyer took him through the moments in that parkade on Canada Day 2021. Zamir broke down in tears as he described what he thought in the moment was a robbery. He said two people in street clothes came up to him in a hurry. He said he locked the door. This is just after he's put his stroller in the car. His wife is in the passenger seat. His 2-year-old son is in the back seat as they've just finished attempting to find Canada Day celebrations in Toronto that night. He said he locked the door. That's when the two people started banging. He tried to go forward. There was a car in the way. He went backwards and out, saying he was scared for his family. Now, as we know today from other testimony, the two people were Constable Jeffrey Northrup and his partner, Sergeant Lisa Forbes. And in front of him was an unmarked police car that had accompanied the two of them, and it served essentially to block in Zamir's vehicle. A collision reconstruction expert has testified that as he reversed, he went forward, was blocked by the car, and as he reversed, his wheels turned, and the front of the car likely swiped Northrup onto the ground before he was run over as the car then accelerated forward. Zamir said he felt what he thought was a speed bump. He didn't realize that these officers were police officers until his car was slammed into by that same unmarked van, and the two officers arrested him and his wife at gunpoint. One of them punched Zamir in the face and pointed at the side of the car, blood, saying, "You just run over my partner." And Zamir believed that he was phoning the police to protect himself from them. He said he prayed that the officer would be okay, and when he found out that he wouldn't be, he was distraught, and in another tearful moment addressed Constable Northrup's family in the courtroom, saying, actually I can quote that for you here, saying, "I didn't mean to hurt your dad. I just wish I could bring him back. I just wish all this didn't happen." And so this is the examination in chief that he was in this morning, being led through these questions by his lawyer. The cross-examination has now begun, and we're expecting the Crown to take issue with some of these statements, to take issue with the sort of subjective conclusions that he was making, because what's important here is his intent. Everyone in that trial agrees that Constable Northrup was struck and killed by the BMW driven by Umar Zamir. The question to make a murder charge stick is, what was Zamir's intention as he was driving in that moment?
Right. CTV Toronto's John Woodward reporting live for us this afternoon. Thanks so much for this, John.
And police continue their search this morning for a senior with dementia who's been missing since Tuesday.
Norman, who goes by the name Bill, was reported missing in the Shepherd and 400 area. That is where the search started. But last night, police moved their target area to Victoria Park in Ellesmere after reports of a sighting there.
Information is coming in not only from this area as well, but as well as the area that he lives in, which is in North York, at the area of Jane and Finch. There is a sighting that we're following up in that he may be in that area as well. So we do have a lot of information that requires follow-up, which is why we went through what's called a level 1 search. It allows us to provide more resources to allow for a greater search area and to follow up that information and tips. As you can appreciate, a lot of video evidence has been collected in relation to this, and we're following those leads as to the direction of travel that Bill may have taken. As you can also well imagine, given the area that is covered by Bill, going from his area of residence at Jane and Finch to where we are here at Victoria and Ellesmere is a considerable distance.
And Norman, who also goes by Bill, is described as being 5'10", with gray curly hair, brown eyes, and was last seen wearing a dark-colored baseball hat, red and blue shirt, blue jeans, a black jacket, and black and white shoes.
Well, coming up next on CP24 Live at Noon, we'll take a look at a new report that finds tenants are paying for major loopholes in Ontario's rental system. You'll want to stick around for this. We'll be right back.
Roughly 700 electrical and trades workers with the TTC are poised to walk off the job. The workers have been without a contract for 2 years. Despite several bargaining sessions since February, a little progress has been made. And as a result, QP has set a strike deadline for midnight April 22nd. The union says that it has no choice but to take job action without fair recognition and treatment of the workers. Wages are the main issue. TTC CEO Rick Leary released a statement which reads in part, quote, "Last November, the TTC board approved a bargaining mandate. We are committed to reaching an agreement that's fair to Local 2 employees while being affordable for the taxpayers of Toronto. I'm committed to keeping our customers and employees apprised of any changes related to these negotiations in a timely manner. We encourage all our employees and our customers to check our website for the most current updates." And from TTC Chair Jamal Myers, quote, "Both sides are actively trying to negotiate a fair agreement. I remain confident that an agreement can be negotiated without the need for job action. Both the union leadership and TTC management have been made aware that the TTC board is following negotiations closely."
The Scarborough RT derailment will be on the agenda at today's TTC board meeting. 5 people were injured last July when an SRT car went off the tracks. After departing Ellesmere Station, the line was taken out of service after the incident. The board is set to consider a report today that highlights consultants' findings about the derailment, as well as the TTC's review of what happened. The Transit Commission says it is suspected that reaction rail anchor bolts failed, which is what led to the failure.
A new poll shows that the Ontario PCs still hold a significant lead over the Liberals and New Democrats. Doug Ford's Conservatives have 40% support among voters. This is according to the Liaison Strategy Survey. Bonnie Crombie's Liberals, they're in second place with 30%. That's a 1-point gain for each of them. Marit Stiles and the NDP, they've fallen to 18% support. That's a 6% drop, or rather 6-point drop from the New Democrats' results in 2022. And David Valentin, a principal at Liaison Strategies, joined us earlier to break down the results.
The regional races are a lot more interesting than the overall provincial picture we're seeing right now. And that is, of course, because you can win a riding with 10,000 votes, 20,000 votes. It only counts for 1 seat. In the system we have today, you have to win a majority of seats to form government. And so what we're seeing is in Hamilton and Niagara, the NDP are actually doing quite well, tied with the Conservatives. And here in Toronto and the GTA, in Toronto, the Bonnie Crombie Liberals are leading. In Northern Ontario, they're tied with the PCs, trailing just 3 points, which is within the margin of error regionally. And the same goes for the 905. So some competitive races in some competitive areas.
The poll of almost 1,300 Ontario voters has a margin of error of 2.7%, 19 times out of 20.
Well, you'll need a umbrella along with other rain gear because it's going to be a soggy day in the GTA.
Yeah, we're in for heavy rain with the risk of a thunderstorm this afternoon. Watching the system very closely for you. Daytime high of 14 today and then dropping to 10 tonight. But yeah, it's all about the active weather. This is a live look of our Futurecast satellite radar. All that green is the active weather, which has arrived here in the GTA. It's looking quite dreary outside. Showers tomorrow with gusty winds and a daytime high of 10. Some sun, but mostly clouds on Saturday. So the weekend looks good. We do begin to dry out by then, and then Sunday looks fantastic. We'll see a daytime high of almost 15 degrees, so enjoy that.
And along with the rain comes the effect on the roads, and for that we have to check in with Adjoa Nsia-Yeboah.
Oh, good. Hey, good afternoon, Bakari and Lena. We are dealing with rain coming down, which, again, is making for a busier than normal drive. And we are dealing with some problems. This is on the eastbound lanes of the 401 in the Express. It is linked in. The camera froze, but at least you can see the situation just froze seconds ago. So it is that left lane and shoulder blocked. There is quite a delay through the rain as you make your way from Renforth. And then some new problems. This is on the Don Valley Parkway southbound right through Dundas. It is a stalled vehicle, has the left lane blocked, so you can already see delays on the approach. And through these trees, there is emergency crews making their way south to clear that situation. Also soggy and slow on the eastbound Garden. We had some problems. Looks like maintenance crews working through the rain. They're off to the side now. They're blocking the right lane past the South Kingsway and then continue slow as you make your way into the downtown core. Lanes reduced to 2 on the eastbound eastbound lanes at the Gardner because of the long-term construction between Dufferin and Strawn. Outside of camera view, problems on the eastbound lanes of the 403 at Waterdown Road. Crews on scene of a collision blocking the right lane. I'll send it back to you.
Angela, thanks so much. Well, anybody who rents in the GTA knows just how brutal it can be. They're paying a lot for rental prices. And a new report from the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, it finds that major loopholes in Ontario's rent control system, that's leading to tenants paying rent increases that are 3 times more than what is allowed under the provincial rent increase guideline. And for more on this conversation, we're joined live now by Ricardo Tranjan. He's the political economist with the Ontario office of the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. Ricardo, thanks so much for joining us. So you have found that landlords are getting really creative and finding ways to jack up the rent by a lot. How does this happen?
Well, there are 3 key loopholes in our rent control legislation. Rent controls do not apply to units that have come to the market after November 15, 2018. So all new units are completely exempt of any kind of price control. Vacant units are also exempt from rent controls, and the average in Toronto of the rent increase on vacant units is above 40%. So when that unit becomes vacant, the rents go up by a lot. And then lately we have above guideline rent increases, and we show that there's a lot of data that above guideline rent increases, it's a mechanism that has been used more and more as a way to circumvent guidelines.
And Ricardo, can you succinctly define what rent control is and how that contrasts to what's actually being seen?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Rent controls nowadays, they are a measure that determines how much rent increases can be. There is a maximum rent increase. So rents can go up, and they can go up every year, but there's a cap about how much they can go up. That cap is usually attached to inflation, so that rents can keep up with inflation and to income, but they cannot go up by however much they want. Unfortunately, there's usually a misunderstanding that rent controls are rent freezes, and they are not. They're absolutely different things, and a lot of the arguments against rent control are actually against rent freezes.
A lot of people in Toronto complain about this problem, but it's not just a Toronto problem. Can you talk about the areas with the highest rent increases, Ricardo?
We saw them across the province. So across the province, we looked over past the 10 last years, and rent guideline increases, which is that amount that we just talked about, how much rents could go up by, they added to 16.5 over that period. But when we look at what the average rents are actually going up by, we find that it's about in the same period, they went up by around 52%. And that we found to be in Toronto, but also in other places, smaller places, cities like Ottawa and also the GTA and places like Waterloo and Kingston. There seem very high increases as well. But it's all over the province, pretty much.
Okay.
And Ricardo, we've seen, some introduction of some new measures to help renters. Prime Minister Trudeau said that renters should get credit for their credit score for paying rent, to help them buy a home. But what does that actually do for the actual prices that keep going up?
The short answer is nothing. What was encouraging a couple weeks ago, the federal government came out and said, we will design a renter's bill of rights. That seems interesting because in other countries and even here in Canada in the past, the federal government plays a much more active role ensuring that tenants everywhere have the same set of basic rights, ensuring that rents everywhere have limits on how much they can go up by, so that it keeps with inflation, it keeps with income increases, and avoid some of the increase that we're seeing. But we don't know what that legislation will look like in practice yet. So we have to wait and see what the federal government will actually do. It could be really promising. It could amount to nothing. It really depends on what they will include in that Bill of Rights.
Okay, Ricardo Tranjan, thanks so much for breaking down these numbers for us. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Ricardo.
Thanks for having me.
And coming up next on CP24 Live at noon, a former football star and accused double murderer, O.J. Simpson, has died at 76. We're going to take a look at his life and legacy coming up. One person is dead following a triple shooting at Queen in Portland. We're going to have the latest on the investigation coming up.
Umar Zamir, the man accused of killing a Toronto police officer, continues to testify at his first-degree murder trial. We'll have the latest coming up.
And former football star and accused double murderer O.J. Simpson has died at 76. We're going to take a look at his life and legacy coming up.
Good afternoon and welcome to CP24 Live at Noon. I'm Lena Latafat.
And I'm Bakari Savage. Football star and accused double murderer O.J. Simpson has died. His family says that he died yesterday after a battle with cancer, surrounded by his children and grandchildren. And once a beloved Hall of Fame athlete and actor, Simpson's success was overshadowed by allegations that he killed his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend, Ron Goldman, in 1994.
After a high-profile trial that captured the attention of the world, he was acquitted but found liable in the deaths 3 years later in a civil trial. In 2008, Simpson was sentenced to 33 years in prison for armed robbery and kidnapping. He was paroled in 2017. Simpson was 76 years old. Film critic Richard Krause says despite the fame he achieved during his life, Simpson will be remembered as an infamous figure.
I think that the football achievements are in the past now. They're so long in the past. He started playing professionally in 1972, and even though he was the first NFL player to rush 2,000 yards, and he was an MVP player before that, a Heisman Trophy Award winner, I think when you hear the name O.J. Simpson, you immediately think about the trial. You immediately think about the white Bronco. And I think as people look back when they hear that name today, those are the first images that will flash through their minds, even though before that, he had lived at the center of popular culture.
An unprecedented 150 million people watched Simpson's not guilty verdict being read October 3rd, 1995.
Well, closer to home, an overnight shooting on a busy downtown street has left one person dead and another 2 people injured.
CP24's Courtney Hills has been covering the story for us all morning and has the latest on the investigation live from Queen in Portland. Courtney.
Good afternoon, Bakari and Lena. And a lot of residents have been coming up to us talking about how concerned they are to see something like this happen overnight. I just talked to one woman. She didn't feel comfortable going on camera, but she told me she heard several shots. She said she woke up, she was quite scared, and looked out the window to see the commotion. Well, we've heard from Toronto police. They say there were several people outside on Queen near Portland when shots rang out. This happened just before 3 in the morning. When they were called here over gunshots, they found 3 victims. 2 men and a woman, all with gunshot wounds. They were rushed to hospital, one with critical injuries, and that person died in hospital, a man in his 30s. And we can also tell you another man and woman still in hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. We also talked to a business owner who has a shop just around the corner. She just opened up. She said she's really getting concerned with what she's seeing in this area. Here's more.
Morning at 7 a.m. when I came here and opened my coffee shop, I saw lots of police and news here around, and I just asked them what's happening, and they said someone killed last night, I think around 2-3 a.m. And I'm just worried about my own business and also about all the society and our kids lives around. Lots of kids live around here, and actually it's a little bit scary. 2 people have gun in their hands and they are walking around and they are shooting. It's really scary.
So safety, a big concern for residents around here. This is now a homicide investigation. We spoke with police in their update. They say they don't know if this is targeted or random. It's still very, very early. They say it looks as though it's targeted, but they still need to figure out exactly what happened, saying the shooting happened outside of an establishment on the sidewalk. Also saying that, again, a lot of people were around here and the businesses here are cooperating, so they have access to surveillance video. So far, what they've been able to figure out, it looks like the shooting happened on the sidewalk and then the people responsible took off in a dark-colored car. It's being described as a 2-door sedan. That's kind of all the police have at this time. So there will be more to come on this. Guy's likely more of a suspect description and some more information on the victims. But there's no question this afternoon, people in this area, this part of downtown Toronto, really, really upset and concerned over the gun violence here. Over to you.
Yeah, that's got to be unnerving. Courtney Hills reporting live this afternoon. Thanks so much, Courtney. Emotional testimony this morning from Umar Zamir, who is accused of killing Toronto Police Constable Jeffrey Northrup. Zamir took the stand for a second day, recounting the events that led to Northrup's death. Zamir testified he didn't know Northrup and his partner, who were dressed in plain clothes, were police officers, and that he was scared and tried to leave the underground parking garage in his vehicle. Prosecutors allege Zamir made a series of maneuvers that caused Northrup's death. Zamir has pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder. And criminal defense lawyer Joseph Newberger says he believes this is a really challenging case for the jury.
The jury has to conclude beyond a reasonable doubt of any of the offense that is charged with the second-degree murder, or if they're lesser included, of manslaughter. So it's a very high threshold. So a jury, in assessing everything, may conclude at some point we're not able to determine which expert we think is giving the most accurate evidence. Well, that type of doubt inures to the benefit of Mr. Zamir and to any accused. So it's going to be a difficult process for the jury, but I think the roadmap that Mr. Zamir is going to outline, along with what his wife has already testified to, I think will help the jury get a long way through their decision and assessing the evidence.
Zamir has pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder.
Roughly 700 electrical and trades workers with the TTC, they're poised to walk off the job.
The workers have been without a contract for 2 years. Despite several bargaining sessions since February, little progress has been made, and as a result, CUPE has set a strike deadline for midnight on April 22nd. The union says it has no choice but to take job action without fair recognition and treatment of the workers. Wages are the main issue.
And TTC CEO Rick Leary released a statement that reads in part, quote, "Last November, the TTC board approved a bargaining mandate. We're committed to reaching an agreement that's fair to local 2 employees while being affordable for the taxpayers of Toronto. I am committed to keeping our customers and employees apprised of any changes related to these negotiations in a timely manner. We encourage all of our employees and our customers to check our website for the most current updates."
And from TTC Chair Jamal Myers, he says both sides are actively trying to negotiate a fair agreement. I remain confident that an agreement can be negotiated without the need for job action. Both the union leadership and TTC management have been made aware that the TTC board is following negotiations closely.
And the Scarborough RT derailment is going to be on the agenda at today's TTC board meeting.
And that meeting continues this hour. 5 people were injured last July. This is when an SRT car went off the tracks after departing Ellesmere Station. The line was taken out of service after the incident. The board is set to consider a report today that highlights consultants' findings about the derailment, as well as the TTC's review of what happened. This is a live look as that continues. The Transit Commission says it is suspected that reaction rail anchor bolts failed, which is what led to the derailment.
A new poll shows that the Ontario PCs still hold a significant lead over the Liberals and New Democrats. Doug Fort's Conservatives have 40% support among voters. This is according to the Liaison Strategy Survey. Bonnie Crombie's Liberals are in second place with 30%. That's a 1-point gain for each of them. Mart Stiles and the NDP have fallen to 18% support. That's a 6-point drop from the New Democrats' result in 2022. David Valentin, a principal at Liaison Strategies, joined us earlier to break down the results.
We're seeing some good results for the Liberals in the 905, which includes Mississauga, Brampton, Caledon, and also Durham region. And so these are places that the Liberals have won seats when they actually go on to form governments. But right now, the numbers are not high enough for them to make any real inroads. So competitive, yes. Would they win some seats? Absolutely. But would they be able to form a government right now? Not so much. Right now, today, it'd still be a Doug Ford majority.
And the poll of almost 1,300 Ontario voters has a margin of error of 2.7%, 19 times out of 20.
Well, turning to the weather, yeah, you're going to need that rain gear. It is a soggy day in the GTA.
Yeah, in case you haven't noticed, we are in for heavy rain today with the risk of thunderstorms this afternoon. Up to 14 today for your high. That's going to drop down to 10 for the low tonight. Showers tomorrow with gusty winds, 10 degrees, some sun, but mostly clouds on Saturday and Sunday. The high near 10 on Saturday, near 15 on Sunday.
12:39, 10 degrees, and for more on how the rain might be impacting the drive, let's turn to Adjoa and Sayabwa. Good afternoon.
Oh, good afternoon, Lena. Yeah, it is creating all sorts of delays, and we are dealing with a couple of problems. We'll start with issues through the rain on the westbound lanes of the 401. This is just as you approach Bayview in the Express. Crews dealing with a stall blocking the right lane as well as the right shoulder. There's a bit of a delay on the approach. You can avoid this one by sticking with those collector lanes. Also problems just cleared on the westbound lanes of the Gardner. Just as you make your way past Jameson, left lane was blocked at the collision, out of the way. Heading into downtown, it is wet and slow, and because of the rain and construction, you'll find delays pretty much from Parkside out towards about Dufferin. Lanes reduced because of this long-term road work. And as you're traveling outside of camera view on the 403 westbound, right at Waterdown Road, crews on scene of a collision that does have the left lane. Also a collision blocking lanes on city streets on DuPont and St. George. I'll send it back to you.
The CP24 traffic report is brought to you by capitaldirect.ca.
Adjoa, thanks so much. Coming up next on CP24 Live at Noon tomorrow is the early bird prize deadline for the Princess Margaret Home Lottery. We'll have more on everything you need to know on the other side of this break. Stay with us.
The early bird prize deadline for the Princess Margaret Home Lottery is midnight tomorrow.
And for more on this, we're joined live in studio by Kim Gardner, Lottery Director for the Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation, and Scott Cowie, cancer survivor. Welcome to you both. It's great to sit down with you.
Great. Thanks so much.
Kim, we'll begin with you. Everybody knows somebody who has cancer. It is a horrible disease, one that has touched so many people, and you continue to do such great work at Princess Margaret, improving cancer outcomes. Can you talk about that?
Sure. So as you said, cancer is a deeply personal disease. I think we all want to do something, anything to stop it. I myself lost my dad to cancer this past year. So for me, it's a deeply personal, important cause. At the Princess Margaret, there is hope, I would say. 2 in 5 Canadians will be diagnosed with cancer, but we're really trying to change that statistic. There is so many things that our brilliant doctors and scientists are doing. There is new treatments that are coming about, major breakthroughs. They're really working at creating new, more effective and less toxic ways to treat cancer. So the funds from the lottery really goes towards speeding up the pace of these innovations.
And speaking of hope, Scott, that's you. We're looking at that right now. What do you want to share with us about your experience?
Well, just physically, it was, I started experiencing just indigestion and trouble swallowing. That's how we knew something was up. But when I got my diagnosis, February 2022, it was just so shocking. It was, being set up with the folks and my care team at Princess Margaret, we talked about hope already, and really, I would say for me, it was such a hopeful experience from the get-go, from at every level, from the assistants when I walked in there to sort of the research fellows to the doctors. Obviously with Princess Margaret being one of the top cancer centers in the world, you can expect the experience and the expertise, but the care and compassion that was delivered with was just profound and such an amazing experience for me.
Right before this interview, we were talking about your story, your journey, and you said, I'm feeling really good. Yeah. Are you amazed by the advancements? Do you think if you had received your diagnosis, let's say 10 years ago, you'd be looking at a similar prognosis?
Tough to say with respect to, how people get through their journeys and whatnot. But I can say this, part of my treatment involved immunotherapy for a year, and the immunotherapy drug that I was grateful and fortunate enough to actually qualify for was only approved less than a year before my diagnosis. So, I really do feel as though I'm living proof of the impact and the life-changing effects of cancer treatment and research.
And so, how do we have the hope and Scott's story wrapped up in this lotto that I just asked you about continues to be even more popular year after year?
That's right. So, I think you really have to buy a ticket, everyone. Everyone buy a ticket.
Yes, everybody.
Because you're supporting people like Scott here and so many others. It's for a really great cause. If you buy a ticket at princessmargaretlotto.com, tomorrow is the final deadline for the early bird prize, $2.6 million prize. This beautiful cottage up in Muskoka on Rill Lake. Picture yourself with a coffee in hand, looking at the lake view, and also know that you get $100,000 cash as well. So really, it's a win-win for everyone. You're giving to an amazing cause and getting a great chance to win over 20,000 prizes, and I do believe it's at 18 million now, the total. So yes.
Wow. If people are looking to get involved, how can they do that?
Well, buy a ticket. That's the best way to do it and the easiest way to do it. There's lots of ways to be involved, but buying a ticket will go towards these types of treatments that Scott is talking about. There's so many opportunities to help out in this area.
Oh, really are. Thank you so much for sitting down with us and talking about this. Great work, as always. Kim Gardner, a lottery director for the Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation, and Scott Cowie. Thank you so much for sharing your
Scott.
story.
Thank you.
And Kim, we're
Thanks
so
for having
sorry
us.
for your loss. Thank you for this.
Thank you.
And coming up next on CP24 Live, it is Dog Bite Prevention Week. We're going to talk to a dog trainer coming up after the break. It's Dog Bite Prevention Week, and we are joined live in studio with Karen Laws, dog trainer, the Ontario dog trainer.
Yes, sir.
So we have to talk about this because, look, we recently heard about a horrible incident with a dog bite, and then we have the other side of the story. One of our coworkers, Carlos, his dog Eddie, bit him in distress. It was a mistake. So let's talk about that right now. What are you saying? What are you supposed to do?
First of all, figure out, why did the dog bite? Is it unprovoked? Is there a reason? Dogs move to pain. Did it feel like it was threatened? Dogs are always in fight or flight mode. They're worried about their survival more than anything else. And often, in fact, just this morning at home, my husband went to put a raincoat on one of our dogs that are here for boarding. Come here, Max. And he tried to bite him because he felt threatened. So if the dog feels threatened, it will move to protect itself. And how do you deal with that? Is you back away, stay calm, and don't yell. Because the dog is just doing what, if someone comes up and bumps into you, you're going to push back.
Okay, so it's estimated that 42 Canadians are bitten by a dog every hour. That's a lot. And you go over 3 tips. What are those top 3 tips?
The first tip is stop. When you see a dog approaching, just stop. Don't wave your hands, stop, because we call it stop, pause, and pat. So you stop, pause, wait for the dog, don't go into its space, and pat your leg. That's the first thing to do. The second thing to do is let the dog come to you. In other words, instead of trying to, so many people think that dogs want to see them and they force themselves on them like this. That's a recipe for a bite. And the third thing is to let the dog come in and just let it sniff. And then when it's telling you it's ready to be petted, like he's doing now, then you can reach down and touch him at his own pace. Don't reach over his head when you want to pet a dog that you've never met before. Touch him on the shoulder or on the chest, not over his head, because that's a threat. That's like me doing that to you. And people tend to go back when someone does that.
Okay, so Karen, people around Toronto, we have a lot of dogs. There are a lot of dog parks. Sometimes the dogs don't always get along, and sometimes people are accidentally bitten when they're trying to break up the dogs. How do you handle those situations? And we have Max right here.
Yeah, this is Max. Breaking up a dog fight's tricky business. A lot of people tend to want to reach and pull their muzzles apart. The best thing you can do, the most effective thing you can do, is make sure you have what we call a flat collar on the dog. Get around the dog that's on top and just twist the collar and lift up.
Okay, so it's important to have a flat collar. Okay,
it is
walk
a
us
flat
through that
buckle
again.
collar. Flat buckle collar. You can see here that Max has just a, I call it just a flat buckle collar. It's hooked on. It looks like this. I'll take it off.
Okay.
Come on, Max.
And we're on that camera right there, so you can show. Just
so you
hold
can
it up
see
to that
it's a flat buckle. It has a little. Come here, Max.
Hey, Max.
Clip like so. Max wants to go visit everybody. Come here, Max. So I like to have one of these on, particularly in a multi-dog situation.
Okay.
So I put the collar on like this. Now these ones, I prefer a buckle to a snap because buckles are more reliable. But because these can come undone. But what you want to do is the dogs they're fighting. You get in on top and you try to grab the collar and lift, twist, and lift up. The other thing you can do is grab the back legs. I find that's not very effective in a 100-pound dog.
Okay, now what about when it comes to children? Do you have to have different techniques when we're talking about toddlers versus a 5 or 6-year-old?
Sure, even toddlers are capable of learning. And they learn, we teach toddlers boundaries. If there's a 2-year-old coming into, even Max, as kind as he is, we want to start to teach them from day one to have respect for animals. So if I was mom and I see little toddler, little toddy toddler coming into the dog, I'm going to go like this. I'm going to go, no, Jimmy, we don't do that. And you be nice. And then I just teach them to calm down. And I take his hand and I say, no, you pet him over here. There's a recent video that I posted of a German Shepherd on a couch and a baby in his face. And the dog is doing everything in its power to stay calm and controlled and not lash out at the child who's in his personal space. Dogs don't like that. So many parents worry about, we want her to love our baby as much as we do. That's not going to happen unless you shape the behavior on both ends. When toddler learns to respect dog, dog learns to respect toddler. And they can learn as soon as they're mobile, they can learn.
Okay, and with that, how do you want to wrap this up? What do you want to leave people with, especially, we're talking about Dog Bite Prevention Week, but overall safety?
Yeah, overall safety and respect. I want people to remember that dogs are thinking beings just like you and I, and they deserve respect. No, you can't let your toddler walk all over your dog and think that's okay. When you meet a dog that you've never met before, I do the act like a tree. Stand here, look away, let the dog come in and sniff you, and when it's ready, then you come down and you pet it very gently on the side. If you have food, you can offer a treat, but don't reach into the dog space. This old myth of shove your hand at the dog so it can smell it is a threat to the dog. So stand still, let the dog come into you, and just put your hand down at your side, excuse me, gently, and let him come and take that food from your hand if you happen to have any. If not, just fold your arms, look away. He'll let you know when he's ready. And he'll come and lean into you, or he'll walk away. And if he walks away, let him go. Okay. If he doesn't want to come in, don't force it.
All right. Karen Laws, dog trainer, the Ontario dog trainer, and of course, Max. Thanks a lot, you guys. Thank you very much. And thank you for watching CP24 Live at noon.